welcome back to Make Reaction Reviews. We're reacting reviews to things on the internet, and today we're returning to Dr. Jordan Peterson. I know we just did him, but he has put out this video and a series of clips from the full-length video with the author who wrote Woke Racism, and I found them really interesting, and I wanted to jump right into it and not let it age a little bit. But anyway, we're gonna get right into it. But before we do, if you like this type of videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that button to get notifications when I do upload. All of that really does help with the algorithm, guys. And if you'd like to help the channel even further, you can donate. My PayPal and Cash App link is in the description box below and also in the comment section. Of course it helps, but you don't have to. You can just like, comment, subscribe. And another great way to support this channel is either join my brand new membership program, different levels, different tiers, different perks, or you can visit my brand new merch shop, links down below. Other than that, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. All right, here we go.
Woke racism and how a new religion is betraying Black America. So, okay, so that's quite the title. I mean, I'm sure it was very carefully chosen. And Wikipedia informed me that you're formally atheistic, and so which may or may not be relevant to our discussion. But it's very interesting to me that you picked that as part of the title. Why do you believe that? Why this emphasis on a new religion? And what does that mean exactly?
Well, you know, we're at a point where the kinds of beliefs that I'm talking about Black people, are no longer held as an opinion. It's at the point where a certain kind of person lives these beliefs in a way that is so impervious to any kind of reasonable discussion that you start to notice that it really is a matter of religion, in the sense particularly of Abrahamic religions, rather than opinion. And there are all sorts of
so
things.
What's the difference between religious belief and mere opinion in your estimation?
It is that many religions require that at a certain point you suspend disbelief and stop relying on conventional ratiocination and logic. There's a point at which you're supposed to have faith and believe in miracles of some sort. And it's at the point where, when it comes to race, there are things that one is supposed to insist on and believe, regardless of whether they correspond to reality or even any sense of justice. One in Christianity is supposed to be dedicated to showing that you have faith in Jesus. Within the religion that I'm talking about, the cardinal point is that you show that you know that racism exists, just that you know that it exists. Now, what you're going to do about it is irrelevant. Whether or not what you're showing actually is racism is irrelevant. The fact is that you knew you were supposed to be looking for it. And only that imperative, as ding-dong as it sounds, explains a lot of the things that we've seen, especially lately. There was a real jump in the rails after summer 2020, but even before that. And it means that a lot of people look at what goes on with the race scene in the United States. And I know to an extent, there is that in Canada too. Whenever you see these sorts of things happening and you see brilliant people making arguments that don't make any sense and utterly despising those who disagree with them as if they were heretics, word chosen deliberately, it's because what we're seeing, even though these are people who are usually very secular in their self-conception, it's a religion. This is exactly the kind of person who sent Galileo into exile a very long time ago. And the people back then often didn't think of themselves as religious. It was just considered truth. We're faced with that same kind of thought, even if the word isn't applied. And the reason I'm putting it that way is not just to annoy people by calling them religious, although I think it will annoy them. And it'll also annoy actual religious experts who will say that I'm stepping outside of my lane, which I most definitely am. But all of this stuff only makes sense if you realize that these people are religious and that they have to be treated as parishioners and not as people who are up for an argument.
I've had a number of people make the same case to me recently, very profound people in my estimation. So I want to run a few ideas by you and see what you think. So,
okay, before we get into the ideas that Dr. Jordan Peterson is going to espouse, this idea of wokeism being the new religion isn't like a new thing. I've heard this before. I believe this is the guy who kind of coined the term woke racism, but a lot of people have compared a lot of the wokesters as cult members before, or fanatics. So this is not like a brand new idea, but I like the way that he's sort of coined that term woke racism. And it does feel like a religion, or feels like, to me, it feels more like a cult or like people who are fanatic about something, obsessed about something. But I have heard someone break it down before when it was comparing it to a religion, and I don't know if I can find this video because it was a while ago, but he broke it down really well where it really makes sense when you compare it to a religion. But one of the main things I do remember him saying is like, just like Christianity and a lot of other religions, woke religion has their own original sin. And can you guess what the original sin when it comes to woke religion? I'll give you a second. The original sin in woke religion was being basically born white, especially if you're born a white male, because simply because you're white, according to a lot of progressives or people who belong to the woke religion or woke cults or fanaticals about wokeism, believe that simply being born white makes you a racist. Simply being born white makes you privileged. And being privileged is a sin within itself. Even though we're all privileged in some way, however, people a part of woke religion would never acknowledge that. Only white people can be privileged, right? Especially, again, if you're white male, right? Being white automatically takes your voice away. You're not allowed to speak. You're not allowed to have opinions. You're not allowed to raise your hand, because a lot of the things that they're speaking of has nothing to do with you. You're not black, you're not a woman, you're not queer, you're not all these other things, so you really don't have a right to have an opinion. So someone broke that down really well, and was like, the original sin of woke religion is just being born white, and especially, again, white male. And it's also really funny too, if you watch like documentaries on cults, a lot of the characteristics that are people who seem drawn to cults are the same sort of type of characteristics of people that are a part of this sort of woke religion or woke cultism or woke fanaticism. I don't know if that's a word, but I just made it up. I don't know. So like you usually have like two groups. Like you have certain people who get drawn to cults basically come from like broken homes, or they didn't have a father, they may have been abused or mistreated or neglected or isolated. They feel like they're not a part of their community. They feel like outsiders, outcasts. No one understands them, different from the rest, right? And then you have the other group of people that tends to be well educated. There are a lot of people who get drawn to cults who are academics, who are professors, a lot of them mostly in the liberal arts. I remember when I was watching one documentary, I think it was like Wow Child, one of these cults, the documentary on these cults, and they were interviewing people or talking about some of the people that were a part of the cult. And when I found out a lot of them were academics, I was like, that's really strange. I can get the other half of it, of people feeling lost, people not having any parents or fathers, or being abused or neglected or whatever. But why would an academic get drawn to a cult when you're supposed to be well read? You're supposed to understand the history of these things. How do you not see what you're doing and what you're getting yourself into? But when I thought about it, I realized it made perfectly good sense, because a lot of academics tend to be Marxists, tend to lean into communism or socialism, and a lot of cults resemble those type of things when it comes to Marxism, socialism, or communism. So it made sense that a lot of academics are drawn to cults. And plus, I have a big belief in just because you are well read doesn't mean you are intelligent, doesn't mean you actually have intellect or an high IQ or something like that. To me, it can also just mean you got really good repeating what you were told to say or what you were told to think, right? Especially when it comes to university. It is extremely left biased, and it has a very extreme sort of accepted narrative when it comes to ideology and the right belief system and the right perspective. And so that's also a lot to do with cults. A lot of cults have an improved narrative, an improved ideology, that you can only be a part of the cult if you adopt this approved narrative and this ideology. So it's no surprise to me that a lot of people who are drawn to cults are the same type of people that are usually a part of these woke religions, and it's no surprise to me that a lot of secular people are part of these woke religions, because a lot of people who are secular or atheist or agnostic kind of fool themselves into thinking just because they don't have a theological God or religion that they aren't religious. And you can still be religious without believing in a theological God, right? Hope I'm saying that right, theological. I'm going to use that word right. Anyway, we're going to get back into it.
So I've thought a long time about the religious endeavor, let's say, from the psychological perspective, trying to unpack it. And it's related in some sense to the idea of depth. And so if you think about stories, literary stories, let's say, great works of literature for that matter, and lesser works, we all have this intuition that some stories are shallow, and they might be entertaining, but they're shallow, and some stories are deep. And we have the same sense in music, for that matter. But so we have this natural sense of depth, and part of what that is related to is something like place in the axiomatic structure of propositional thinking. So something is deep if a lot of other things you think depend on it, and it's shallow if you can dispense with that and it doesn't do much to your underlying cognitive architecture. So that seem reasonable so far?
Very much, yes.
Okay. And then I would say that there's a set of experiences that are universally human, more or less, that occur when our deeper beliefs are challenged. And that threatens the way that we construe the world and our ability to act in it. It threatens us with nihilism. It threatens us with chaos. It's no trivial matter. That happens often when heretofore separated cultures come into contact with one another.
Definitely.
So worlds can move when that occurs. Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and then I would say that the set of emotions that are associated with the movement of deep beliefs are what we describe when we describe religious experience. Mm-hmm. And this is part of the reason I've had a number of conversations with famous atheists and very smart people. I mean, Harris, for example, is an extraordinarily smart person. And I'm familiar with Richard Dawkins' work and Daniel Dennett's work. These people are far from foolish, but they miss the point to me to some degree. Even scientifically speaking, because they treat religion as if it's a set of abstract propositions about the material structure of the world. And that's usually how the argument with religious people is framed. And they're often foolish enough to accept that initial framing. But there's a lot of phenomena that fall into the religious domain that have nothing to do with propositional truth. I mean, we already had a conversation about music. And music has often been used across many cultures for sacred purposes. And part of the reason for that is the emotional state that it's capable of invoking, which is something like awe at the deepest level. And also its ability to unite people in harmony, let's say, and in dance and all of that. And so there's no escaping the reality of the religious instinct. And here's the point I'm trying to make with all that to some degree. So imagine this, think about this for a second. So there's this statement in the New Testament that we should render unto God what is God's and unto Caesar what is Caesar's. And you'd be hard pressed to find a single statement ever uttered by anyone that had a more remarkable effect on the development of political systems. Because in some non-trivial manner, the idea that state and church should be separated is justified by that statement. So it's a deadly statement, but I also think it might be true psychologically. And that if we don't have an explicit territory marked out psychologically and socially for the sacred, and so that would be for the deepest things, then what happens is that things that should not be so deep start to take on exactly that aspect. And I'll finish this with one observation. I've been talking with someone I really admire. His name is Jonathan Pageau, and he's one of the deepest thinkers I've ever encountered in the religious domain. And he's well-versed in postmodernism.
Can you spell his last name?
Pageau.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, French-Canadian Catholic, turned atheist, turned Russian Orthodox icon carver. That's part of his background. Anyways, he made a very interesting comment in a talk I was watching on the weekend about false gods, let's say. And he talked about the danger of the idea of inclusivity when it's elevated to the highest place or put in the deepest place, let's say. And so if the purpose of all organizations becomes radical inclusivity, so that's the uniting factor, then the specific purpose of all those organizations is instantly threatened. And so part of the problem here is that what should be lower in the hierarchy of values is put in the higher place inappropriately, and that produces all sorts of social catastrophe.
All right, that was the end of the clip, guys. Again, this is a clip that Dr. Jordan Peterson edited from a longer talk or discussion with the author of Woke Racism. Wow, I agree with a lot of things he said is really interesting. Speaking of Sam Harris, he brought up Sam Harris as a intellectual person who is an atheist, but I also read Sam Harris's book Lost Connections that I've mentioned on the channel before because it's really good. And he talks about the societal problem when it comes to mental health issues, the rise of mental health, the epidemic of it, and why we have it. And one of the chapters he talks about is, again, it's sort of like junk values in a way. We don't have in-depth values anymore like we used to have before, you know, technology and shit like that. And saying that it's a human need to have some sort of deep value. And sometimes your deep value comes from your tribe or your community or your ideology, your belief system, or your religion. And Dr. Jordan Peterson sort of brought up the fact that if we don't have sort of a united sort of deep value or a united belief system, then people sort of started reaching out for their own deep values, but they're reaching out for their own deep values in a society where we worship junk values, things that are really not that important, like the color of your skin or what's between your legs or your sex or your sexuality and stuff like that, and kind of making that the religion, making that the most important thing to value. And it's also interesting because, like, you know, that conspiracy of the government wanting to sort of kill God and kill religion, because if you kill that off, it doesn't take away the human instinct to want to grab on to something more important than them, something of a higher power or something deep, because we have a really deep need and feeling that way as human beings. So if you take away the theological God, you know, you demonize that, you cast it out, then people are going to again start to look for something of value. But we're living in a system of junk values. So what are you going to hold on to if there's nothing really deep of value that we are valuing? So I thought that clip was really, really interesting. I'm glad they hit on this because, again, this has been a discussion about wokeism. Even the last 2 years with the global situation, how people have been treating this as a religion, as this sort of tribalistic mentality. Tribe is synonymous with cult. And I see the woke, I know it's called woke religion, but I see it more like because it feels fanatical to me. It's like you can be religious and just be calm about it, or you can be like a Jesus freak and you're running around with a Bible, bumping everybody in the head with a Bible, telling everybody they're gonna go to hell. To me, that's a fanatic. And so a lot of these people feel fanatical to me, which kind of makes me feel more like it's cultish or tribalistic. Again, like I have this ideology, this is my God, this is my religion, this is my everything, this is my deep value, everything about me. Everything that makes me is a part of this belief system, and so like I can't let it go for anything, and I will fight for anything. But the problem is that your value is surface. It's not meant to be that deep. Your race is just the color of your skin. Your sex is just, you know, what's between your legs and what makes your body and stuff like that. Like your sexuality is just a part of your life. It's not supposed to be that deep, but people creating it as this religion. And I think that's why people just sort of throw out facts and data. It's the same, like he said in the beginning, it's like when you do believe in God and higher power, there is a part of it where you just have to have faith and just believe. Even though, I think he did hit on a little bit, like not every person who's spiritual just believe in woo-ha magic. Like there is some, for me personally, there is some science and sort of history behind it. It's not just like, you know, like every time like I get into like a debate with an atheist, like the first thing they say is like, oh, so you believe in like this white man in the sky? And I'm like, why are atheists like so obsessed with that idea? Because I don't know any like Christian or person who's a spiritual believer believing there's a random person just hovering in the sky. Like no one believes that, but a lot of atheists think Christians or spiritual people believe that for some reason. But anyway, I digress and I think I'm rambling, but I totally agree with them. I think, again, this is why a lot of the woke religious or the woke cultish or the woke fanatics just dispense in any sort of facts or really statistics or really data, because it's sort of like just a belief, like in like a faith, right? And to deny that is this really deep racism going on, and or really deep misogyny or fatphobic, or transphobic is almost blasphemy, right? And like most people of color I know, most women I know, most, you know, people probably LGBTQ people I know, even if they espouse the sort of progressive woke religion narrative, like, you know, black people are so oppressed, we're being murdered in the street, we're being hunted by cops, women still can't get ahead in this world, and everyone just hate fat people and trans people. Even if they go along with that narrative, their own personal lived experience is usually abstract or excluded from that. Most people get along in life perfectly well and perfectly fine, but they'll still repeat and parrot this narrative simply because it's a part of their ideology. Anyway, I hope I was making any sense. Tell me, guys, what do you think of this video, what Dr. Jerry Peterson said, what the author said, what I said in the comment section below. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell to get notifications when I do upload. All of that really does help with the algorithm, guys. And if you'd like to support the channel any further, you can donate. My PayPal, my link is in the description box below and also in the comment section. Of course, it helps, but you don't have to. You can just like, comment, and subscribe. I also have a second travel vlog channel. I travel as a lifestyle. I live abroad. If you'd like to know where I am in the world, you can go to the description box below and also in the comment section. Click the link, go subscribe to my travel vlog channel, and or follow me on my travel Instagram. My stories is usually what's most up to date. And you guys have an amazing day. Bye.